Good evening, guys. And from a generally disgruntled New York Giants football fan, congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. They played a spectacular game. It was a game that I guess I would say I'm surprised in terms of the overall result, in the sense that I'm not surprised that they won the game. I actually thought Philly had a really good chance to win. I think in terms of the fact that it wasn't even a competitive game, generally speaking, speaks to a couple of different things that happened. I'm assuming all of you guys may have watched. And I agree with Cajun. No three-peat, good calls by the refs, besides the two in the first couple of downs. But I will tell you, and this is something that I think is very important, I can't say if one call could have made the difference or not, but I will say this. That offensive pass interference call on A.J. Brown on that first drive, I got the sense that the Eagles had some jitters in the early going of the game, especially Barkley. Barkley was so amped up for this game. Looked like he was going to jump out of his cleats. But I will say this. That offensive pass interference call that was so egregiously incorrect, and immediately you're thinking right off the bat that the refs are on the side of the on the side of the Chiefs, and that this game is going to end up being, just another hard to watch, heavily slanted in Casey's direction type of a performance. It did not turn out to be that way. In fact, I think that call is actually what set Philly off. I think they got very upset in pursuant of winning the game as a result, and they just kind of locked in. And they had a pass rush that I had not seen in quite some time. I cannot recall the last time I saw Mahomes running for his life like that. He got absolutely clobbered all game, and he clearly didn't like it either. Can't say I'm too surprised that was the case, but who would? He's so used to never having to worry about that. But there's certain things about Philly. And guys, if you haven't hit the like button yet, please make sure that you do. We want to try to get this out to as many people as we can, which is usually always the pursuits of these last-minute decisions. But as I said last week, I'm going to try to make Pontificating with Pete on Sundays a little bit more consistent. I just wanted to come on and talk about the game briefly after it concluded. And, just share some thoughts as a sports fan, but also somebody who feels that the Buffalo Bills should be in the Super Bowl right now. They're not, but should be. This game was a major letdown. I think a lot of people anticipated that the game would be close. It wasn't close at all. I just think Philly was absolutely determined to right the wrongs of what had happened when they met in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And for those of you who did see the Super Bowl back in 2023 that it took place, the call at the end of the game, that was a holding call against Philly. It decided the game. Now, was it the right call? Debatable. It wasn't a completely egregious call. But in that moment, you don't make a call like that when you know it's going to determine the outcome of the game. Kansas City was still going to be able to kick a short field goal and take the lead. And instead, they call that foul. Kansas City runs out the clock, kicks a field goal to win the game. Don't think for a second that that was not on Philly's mind for the past 2 weeks. There is no question that that was being talked about constantly in that locker room. Do not forget what happened and right the wrong of the past. And I have no doubt that that played a role in as convincing of a Super Bowl victory that we've seen since the Seahawks blew out the Broncos in very surprising fashion back in 2014. So it's been 11 years since we've had a Super Bowl that was just completely non-competitive. It was actually a Super Bowl in which I hosted my first Super Bowl party. So, of course, it didn't exactly go off as well as we would have liked, because that game was pretty much over on the first play when Manning missed the snap and they got a safety. And Seattle was off and running from there. Tonight, it took a while, but Kansas City could not solve Philadelphia's pass rush. That was the game. in so many ways. The front four of Philadelphia absolutely played as good a game as you could have hoped to have played. They did. Chuck, I totally understand. Buffalo should have been in the Super Bowl, in my opinion. They should have been representing the AFC. And I think it's fair to say if Buffalo was here, it would have been a much more competitive game. Kansas City just kind of burned out right on the national stage. What I can hope is that Travis Kelce is going to retire and Taylor Swift will no longer be seen at NFL games on a regular basis. Yeah, as Jen likes to point out, it is kind of a boo-hoo kind of a situation for Mahomes. He got clobbered. He got his ass kicked tonight, like in a very, very big way that you normally don't see. And like I said, I know that the refs wanted to protect him. Thank you, Chris. And it's good to see you. And make sure you all do that if you can. But overall, it was something I was talking about with Jen earlier regarding the fact that this was a game that I don't think the ratings are going to be great for. And I don't think they're going to be great for a couple of reasons. Number one, there was actually a lot of seats that did not get filled for the game tonight. That's extremely rare for a Super Bowl. In fact, the ticket prices for the game got down below $2,000 a ticket. Now, granted, anyone who is looking at this, for a little while, it was entertaining to watch Philly just completely run roughshod over Kansas City. I mean, as a Giants fan, I can respect and appreciate great football being played. Philly played a great game, and they had a great year. As a Giants fan, it obviously pains me to no end to see Saquon wearing the forest green. It hurts a lot because we gave him up for basically nothing. And now, as we look ahead, my team looks ahead to the offseason. We do have some opportunities in front of us, including what are we going to do about our quarterback situation. As a Giants fan, I've already heard the rumblings that Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford are probably the top two targets. It'll be interesting to see if that ultimately comes to pass. But as far as the game is concerned, Rajan, I got to tell you, it was the one thing that I didn't see. I didn't see Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. I'm sure that will pop up on YouTube shortly thereafter. The one time to actually take a break was during the halftime. But if Kendrick did a great job, I'm glad you enjoyed it. There's actually a lot of people who specifically tune in just for the halftime show. If they like the musical act, that's all they're going to care about. There's different peaks and valleys that the Super Bowl will have in terms of viewership. In this case, one of the things that I think is going to hurt the league in terms of the numbers, aside from the fact that there were a lot of tickets that were still available, as I said, there were tickets that got below $2,000 for a Super Bowl in this era. That's absolutely unheard of. The average ticket price for the Super Bowl is usually around, I want to say like $10,000, $12,000, an insane number. But even if you're talking about being in the upper bowl, if you really want to be there, this would have been the opportunity of a lifetime for a lot of people that generally can't afford to go. This is the number one viewed event of the entire year in the world. I wonder how the World Cup measures up in other countries when it comes along every 4 years. I wonder what their ratings are. I don't know if anybody in the audience would happen to know what the ratings actually do look like for the World Cup, comparatively speaking, to the Super Bowl. And so the Super Bowl this year obviously was a big surprise in terms of the outcome, not just the fact that people were having, you could call it whatever you want, Kansas City fatigue, Taylor Swift fatigue, referee favoritism fatigue. There were a lot of things that I think led to what will ultimately be a down year in terms of the viewership. But the one thing that will not be denied is how much the viewership in the fourth quarter probably tailored off in many ways. Remember, they went to the fourth quarter and the Eagles were up, I believe the score was 37-6 going into the fourth quarter. So to say that they're going to suffer ratings-wise in the fourth would be an understatement. Yeah, I bet they are. Hey, you want to get in there for the last few minutes? All kidding aside. It was an absolute domination, which we rarely see. And it was the domination of a two-time defending champion going for history. And they fell flat on their face. But the truth is, guys, they didn't deserve to be here. And I say that now. with no reservation whatsoever. Kansas City should not have been in the Super Bowl. Buffalo should have been there. I have been following sports for many years. I, under no circumstances, have any illusions about the involvement that the powers that be at the highest level of these professional sports leagues have when they want to see a team, they want to see a stars. In this case, Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl. These things matter. And it pains me to say that. And I feel terrible for Buffalo and their fan base because they've never won a Super Bowl. Kansas City's won 3 in the last 5 years, including the last 2. Now they are the ex-champions and Philly has taken over. But the truth is, it should have been a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl. That's what it should have been. And it probably would have been a hell of a lot more competitive and a heck of a lot more entertaining. But that's not what we got. We got a faceplant of a Super Bowl. And hopefully the league is going to suffer financially as a result. Is that going to change what's going to happen next year? No, because there's no guarantee you're going to get where you are again. Josh Allen was selected as the league MVP on last night. And I actually think he was the MVP. I know Lamar Jackson had an amazing year. Aaron Rodgers had a really good year. And, of course, Saquon Barkley had a nearly record-setting year. But in terms of an MVP for a team, Josh Allen is certainly that and then some. So what happens now? Well, tomorrow is always one of the most interesting sports days of the year. The day after the Super Bowl, especially with everything that's going on right now, a lot of teams are going to be moving in a lot of different directions. I see that, knack for that. Blake, I'm not a fan of Blake Lively. I like Ryan Reynolds. He's a funny guy. But Blake Lively, I believe, is a close friend of Taylor Swift's. She may have been at the game as well. All that aside, to me, the game ended in so many ways when Mahomes threw the pick 6. Kansas City does not make mistakes. They never put the ball on the ground, and Mahomes very rarely, if he throws an interception, is going to throw one for a pick 6 or one in his own side of the field. And he did it twice. So to say that that was a revelation that never happens, that's different. And so at that moment, and you kind of got the impression that he didn't know from which direction the pass rush was coming from. But when you're able to get a rush on only your front 4, you don't need to bring 1 or 2 extra defenders in to try to get to the quarterback, then Mahomes is just a sitting duck. He's very good at maneuvering, and he had some good plays late that maybe was just too little too late, and perhaps Philly had eased up on their pressure. It's understandable when you're up by 5 scores. But ultimately, when it mattered most, they did what they needed to do. Did Pfizer lose? Well, if Travis Kelce retires, which I think is a high likelihood at this point, what's going to happen? Now they'll find somebody else. But I do think Kansas City, as a dynasty, if you want to call it that, probably as close to it as you could get outside of winning 3 in a row and, of course, winning 3 out of 5 and winning the last 2. Yeah, I would say that it's probably somewhat of a changing of the guard, at least for the foreseeable future. You know, Kansas City's got a lot of decisions to make in the offseason. And like I said, depending on what Kelce chooses to do, I believe he'll retire. His brother retired. He's obviously won 3 Super Bowls. Most people are lucky if they ever get one. He's got a few. And maybe he'll go start doing music with his lovely lady. Look, I know a lot of people love Taylor Swift. I just as an objective observer of her work, she's got some decent stuff. I'm not going to knock her, but the obsession with her is it's kind of scary. And I know people that spend a lot of money to follow her, to go to her shows. I think she doesn't project a wrong message or anything like that. Yes, Ray, it does sting, and I can accept that. But Saquon is an amazing player. Dare I say, Saquon Barkley is the second most talented Giant of all time after Lawrence Taylor. He was that special of an athlete. Unfortunately, there was never a team around him that allowed him to reach the heights that I think he was capable of reaching, and clearly he reached it this year with Philly. And it sucks. And I can understand trading him, but they traded him for literal pennies on the dollar, which made no sense. Why would you do that? And if you're going to trade him, why are you trading him in conference? And if you're going to trade him in conference, how do you trade him to your biggest rival? For nothing. And on top of everything else, the Giants were a bottom feeder this year, if there ever was one. They have a top 3 pick in the draft, and they're still planning to bring back the same head coach and the same general manager. It makes no sense. So as a fan, it really sucks. But I also don't think Kansas City deserved to even be in the Super Bowl, much less win 3 in a row. And that got completely put to rest in the first half. Like I said, Philly was they looked a little jittery early on, but I'm telling you, that offensive pass interference call lit a fire under their ass. They were fucking pissed off. They were ready to roll. They were like, that's it, we're going to kick their fucking ass. And that's what they did. They would not allow the officiating to determine the outcome of this game. They were more aggressive. They clearly wanted it more. There's no question that was a huge part of it. And that's what ends up happening in some cases. You get a little too cocky, a little too big for your britches. And then they got the Rocky special, you know? Rocky went back to the drawing board. It's funny. It's like Rocky 3. It really is. Philly loses in very controversial fashion 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. They bided their time to get back. They got the eye of the tiger. Yeah, live it up. Enjoy it while you can. I'm getting back to hating you guys in 5 seconds. Don't kid yourself. I'm letting you have it tonight because you earned it and you played a phenomenal football game. Yes, I am channeling the wise words of a Jen Perlman, but it's true. They got the eye of the tiger tonight. And if there is a song that will play down Front Street in Philadelphia, it will be Eye of the Tiger. It makes the most sense. It's really Rocky 3. That's the story of the Philadelphia Eagles this year in pursuit of getting back on top, a place that they felt that they rightfully belonged on 2 years ago. It was taken from them by a very questionable call by the officials that handed the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. By the way, if I'm the Eagles and you're watching the celebration, I certainly hope somebody said to Travis Kelce to know your role and shut your mouth. That's what he did back in 2023. No, I think, listen, Phil, there are similarities. If anybody's ever competed athletically, all sports have different pursuits in terms of meaning and metaphors. In this case, I think the closest metaphor to explain the rise, fall, and rise again of the Eagles is Rocky 3. That's the story that was told tonight and will be told for quite some time. This was an historic victory for the Eagles. They earned it. They were, for all intents and purposes, the best team this year. I would love to have seen them play a healthy Detroit Lions team in the NFC Championship game. We didn't get that game. Wish we did. Maybe we'll get it next year. If Aiden Hutchinson is healthy, I do think that the Lions will most likely be back. It'll be interesting to see what the Buffalo Bills do, because the Bills have to be looking at this like, we should have been there tonight. The Baltimore Ravens are going to do the same thing. They're going to look at this and say, we should have been here tonight. We were better than this. And they certainly would have been. There's an aiding and abetting going on with the league and Kansas City Chiefs. But maybe, just maybe, it's now going to end. But who knows who's next? That's the problem with our broken political and economic system. It's not surprising that these things happen. Well, as a Giants fan as well, all I can say is I'm just glad that the Chiefs did not get to make history because they did not deserve to make it. And as a Giants fan, I will always have Super Bowl 42 as the greatest moment of my sports life. I never expect to get one better than that night. And then we got ridiculously blessed and got another Super Bowl 3 years after, or 4 years after. 4 years. And we beat the Patriots again. And Eli Manning should be in the Hall of Fame. And I believe he will be. Can we all show a little love and support for Jen and her bottom-feeding Miami Dolphins? It is unfortunate. But the days of Don Shula and Dan Marino, or should I say Bob Greasy and Mercury Morris, those days are long, 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 long gone. And we'll see what happens with them this offseason. But I do think that football is still a lot of fun, however much it reflects a lot of the downside of our political and economic system. I don't know if you guys were aware, but at the time that they were showing Trump at the game, they were playing God Bless the USA, and they weren't talking about it on the broadcast, which I have to say is not totally surprising. But we're going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow night because there are a lot of stories that I don't want to get into now. I want to save them for tomorrow when we talk with Savvy Sabs. Remember, we're going to be live tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. You're going to want to tune in for that. There are a number of things that we are going to cover. But like I said, I wanted to jump on here tonight and just go over briefly the Super Bowl, which, like I said, it was very effective. But in terms of some of the things that we will talk about tomorrow, we're going to talk about J.D. Vance's statement pertaining to whether or not there should be any judicial check on Trump's actions. And that is specific to Trump freezing federal funds in spite of the court order. It also looks like Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA has been receiving funds from USAID. How about that? Good to hear from you, Chip. So that would put you at, so then you can definitely tune in for those live stream and then swing on over to that event. Okay. So there was one commercial that stood out in the Super Bowl, just one. And I don't know how many of you guys caught this, but I sure did. Colin, I want to see if you can grab the Super Bowl commercial of him and hers. We could talk about it tonight. We're sure as shit going to talk about it tomorrow. It's basically a pharmaceutical commercial disguised as a commercial talking about healthcare. By the time the Harrison Ford commercial, which was a long commercial, was played, I bet you most people weren't watching the game anymore. We agree on that, JD. Yeah, that was kind of silly. But Kiss from a Rose is an amazing song. Always give it up to Seal for that. Bernie was a pretty good athlete. He was a great runner. He also was a good, he could swing the bat pretty good too. Okay, I think we might have this. I think we might have. I think I'm not coming on here to do a long conversation this evening, but this is something I wanted to discuss. So is this
Is it the obesity one?
Yes, that's
okay.
it.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that one, Phil. I must have missed that one. But this is a commercial that we're going to play now, and we're going to play it tomorrow night with Savvy, and we're going to discuss. This commercial tells you all you need to know about how fucked up this country is at this point, how they can identify the problem, and they just want to twist the knife a little deeper.
Obesity is America's deadliest epidemic.
This is America.
74% of us are overweight, and obesity leads to 500,000 deaths each year.
Why, you just have to stop eating, Jimmy.
This is America.
Something's broken, and it's not our bodies. It's the system. Welcome to Weight Loss in America.
Like and subscribe.
A $160 billion industry that feeds on our failure.
Yeah.
There are medications that work, but they're priced for profits, not patients.
This is America.
This system wasn't built to help us. It was built to keep us sick and stuck. But not anymore. Hims & Hers offers life-changing weight loss medications. They're affordable, doctor-trusted, and formulated in the USA. You get a treatment plan designed by a doctor to fit your body, goals, and lifestyle. You deserve to feel great in your body. This is the future of healthcare. This is Hims & Hers. Join us in the fight for a healthier America.
This has to be, without question, one of the most fucked up commercials I've ever seen in my life. This is so bad and so wrong on so many levels. They're identifying the actual problem, and they're giving you a big pharma solution. They can claim all they want that this is not as bad as taking, Pfizer medication. Bullshit. We all know what the fucking problem is here. We know what it is. Our food is poison, which is why there is an obesity epidemic coupled with many diseases led by heart disease and diabetes. This is not a conspiracy. This is very real. We know that this is the reason. And we, of course, have our opinions about RFK and what his pursuance will ultimately be if he is confirmed as HHS. And then the ultimate solution is single-payer healthcare. I got to tell you, I was watching this commercial and I'm thinking, how the hell did this clear? I'm like more than halfway through the commercial. I'm thinking, how did this get on the air? How did they let this get through in front of 100 million people? Oh, that's right. It was too good to be true. And that's what happened. It was too good to be true. It couldn't possibly be a commercial for healthy food and universal health care. No. Or exercise. How about that? Hey, you're overweight, you're obese. How about eating right and exercising, getting in a good night's sleep, and having a single-payer system? So you don't have to be dependent on your dead-end job in order to be able to afford to live. I don't know. Just a thought. All really reasonable things. We don't see commercials for that. Walkable cities, bike lane. Who the fuck needs that shit? Just take more medicine. That's what's going to solve it. And I feel bad. I do. I feel very bad for people that are in such a way that their health is just out of sight, out of mind. And for some people, it is very hard to lose weight. It is very hard to be healthy. As we've often pointed out, it's expensive to be poor. And one of the reasons it's expensive to be poor is because of commercials like that, where they prey on the vulnerable and the weak. Boy, I tell you, that commercial, it was like offering you a big scoop of Ben and Jerry's half-baked ice cream and then pulling it back before you could get a taste. How's that for a reference? But yeah, that was so bad. And then the people that wanted to be in that commercial. Well, Jane, you're going to have to explain yourself. You're totally going to have to explain yourself. It's not my fault. Totally not my fault. Well, the fact of the matter is, third parties is not the solution. The solution is a labor movement outside of the two-party system. Now, voting still matters, and especially voting at the local level when it comes to your city council, your county commission, mayor. Those types of positions really matter, and they're generally speaking nonpartisan. That's what, in terms of electoral politics, that really matters. And again, not to say that electoral politics doesn't matter, it does. But building that third-party infrastructure is damn near impossible, where you could be building a labor movement that is still growing outside of electoral politics because people want to be involved. So did I. There's no way I was casting my vote for either one of them. And there were times over the last, 8 years where I contemplated if I was going to do a fuck you vote for Trump. I never did it. I thought about it. But then I realized I'm not going to continue to perpetuate this broken system. Even if I'm just one vote, I'm not going to do it. And that's the mindset that you have to have. If we are going to get out of this, if we're going to right the ship, however dire it may look right now, the only way it's going to happen is if we stop banging our head against the wall trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. It's not going to work. But there is a big event coming up on February 22nd, which we will cover. We're going to team up with Due Dissonance and their Super Stream to promote Shama Sawant's Worker Strike Back event that she's doing with Chris Edges, among other people. That's the future. That's where our greatest impact can happen. And in terms of true left populism, that's where it's at. That's where we'll find the most support. So voting matters, but it's definitely not where the direction is going in terms of where we want to be. And my God, you want to talk about pathetic. How much more pathetic can you get than the Democratic Party? I mean, holy shit, are they just at death's door at this point? They have nothing going for them. Zero. So the fight will continue. Yep. That's what I heard too. So India revoked Shama Sawant's visa today. We'll talk about that tomorrow too. And Phil, I totally respect that. And I am, people should be able to do whatever it is that they feel is what will best serve not just themselves, but in general, for the good of people. It's kind of like, Doge going after the USAID. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow in great detail, because on the one hand, the USAID is being exposed for the corrupt government racket that it's been for a very long time. And only somebody like Trump was ever going to allow something like that to happen. The problem is that the person who's pursuing it, Elon Musk, is not fighting on our behalf, not even a little bit. He's fighting for his own interests. That's his pursuit. That's what he's trying to do. He has no interest whatsoever in doing the right thing. And he's a very small man in many ways. And I would agree with that. And, the one thing that Keaton and Russell said on Due Dissonance earlier today is that we're falling into the depths of fascism. The only reason I don't agree with that particular sentiment in terms of the corporate state taking over all elements of society, they've taken over a significant portion, no question about it, and have made it nearly impossible for the average person to survive within this system. But here's the kicker. There are too many people in this country, millions upon millions, that are armed, that believe in the Second Amendment, and will fight to defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, have they been pushed to a point where we're heading in that direction? We're getting there. It's getting pretty dicey. But this is the big difference between why fascism won't come to the United States and why it did come to Europe. Europe is not armed. We are. Very much so. So when everyone's thinking, like Mr. David Hogue, who thinks that people should have their guns taken away, well, when you start wondering the depths of which fascists want to be tyrants like the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gateses, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and the like of the world, be thankful that there are millions of people out there who will tell you, you can take our constitutional republic from our cold, dead hands. Didn't work out too well for Beto when he said it. So if the pursuit of a fascist state, which is to control by force, much like communism, only in this case, instead of having a complete centralized control and communal control over all resources, now it's corporate control over all. You can only push people so far before they say enough is enough. I'm not going to take this anymore. And in many ways, because of what we're facing right now, the best thing that we have going for us in this moment, and again, another thing we'll talk about with Savvy tomorrow, the best thing we have going for us in this moment is the fact that the Democratic Party is basically as good as dead in terms of having any type of a general impact on the overall political discourse in this country. People will still vote for the Democratic Party because it's a vote against the Republican Party, a vote against Trump, et cetera, et cetera. And it's an option that for many people, it's what they're used to. But in terms of the future, the Democratic Party has no future because they're not going to change. If that DNC chair race was any indication, they're telling you it will not change. We refuse. You might as well either join the Republicans, pursue third-party interests, get the hell out of politics. Whichever option does not result in the Democratic Party changing its infrastructure. It won't do it. They are willing to go by the way of the Whigs. They are willing to go there. The big difference, Chip, and the reason why the Republicans haven't spit the bit, so to speak, is because of Trump and Trump alone. It is the Trump Republican Party now. Everything will go pursued through his desires going forward. In many ways, kind of like a dictator. It's the Trump show now. Kiss the ring. On the one hand, that's a very good thing because the likes of the Bill Kristols and the David Frums and Jennifer Rubins of the world, that whole Bush-Cheney neocon era of the Republican Party in the Republican Party is dead. Now, is it dead in the Democratic Party? No. But I also think that the Republican Party still has remnants of it, and they're pursuing it through the means with Israel. And again, it's mostly economic, if you really think about it. That's where the interests come into play. Both Clintons sold out the Democrats, but they were right at the top of the list. The question is, Sam, what is really America first? Because the direction that this administration is going with Israel is just as bad, if not potentially worse, than what Biden and Harris were doing. And that is anything but America first. It's America last, because Israel will drag America into the pits of hell if we let them. That's the danger. So we don't know what's coming just yet. But there is a lot of inherent danger that lies ahead, so we have to be ready for this. Tim is right. That is our economy. It's billionaires, and then it's everybody else. And it only takes a few. I see people online constantly still talking about what they perceive as being, billionaires pay too much or pay enough or too much in taxes. How little they understand how it actually works. How little they understand what gets taxed and what doesn't. And the effective tax rate of what they end up paying. Do you know what the effective tax rate that Elon Musk pays? I'll give you a hint. It's a lot lower than yours. And that is the problem. There's too much penis envy out there for the super rich. Oh, Tim got it right off the bat. It's a little over 3%. That's it. That's all he pays. But he pays billions of dollars. He's paying a lot of money. It's not how it works. Now, despite what our good friend Steve Grumbine says about there being a pie, it's not technically a pie, but it kind of is. If we need a certain amount of capital to be taxed in order to avoid the pitfalls of inflation, of recession, you have to have a tax balance. Money in, money out. But if it gets too big and then it only ends up in certain hands, you have an imbalance that the average person can't afford. That's the real problem. So what happens? I'm not sure. It will get worse before it gets better. That's going to happen. People are still in the honeymoon phase with Trump. And they're going to stay there for perhaps a considerable while longer. The danger, of course, is what is happening with the Palestinian people. Will the war in Ukraine finally end? And what are we trying to do with China? That's a very dangerous path to go down. That's what we have to think about. At some point, you have to see the system for what it really is. I've done okay within the system, but I know how broken it is. And I work with people that help break it. I sat in a real estate event not too long ago with a guy that's got lawsuits coming out of his ass. And yet he's trying to convince upper middle class people to give him 6 figures for real estate investments. And those types of people hurt our economy. And they give a lot of money to politicians. A lot of money. Money talks, justice walks. That's our system. So we have to figure out how we can unify. If you don't have the money, you must pursue it through other means. The best way to do that is through labor. Stephen Walt, thank you, Chip. Stephen Walt has suggested that Trump has already shot his bolt with the absurdity of his executive orders. Yeah, maybe. It's possible. What about the real issues that are affecting our everyday lives, aside from the pursuance of Israel first. That's what happens when you take all that filthy, disgusting Zionist money. About the cost of food. I think everybody has seen the effects of the cost of eggs. But eggs are very good for you. And so, aside from that, we don't have health care. It's gotten so much worse. Our food, very unhealthy. There is also a lack of trust and faith in the system. Lack of trust and faith in elections. That's a dangerous place to be. So perhaps people are just a little uneasy. And they should be. Because if this is true, that's what should get you upset. That's the type of thing that should get you upset. Because that's where the real problem is. Is there any justification that eggs should be 4 to 5 times as much as they are in Mexico? Why? Because the American people are not willing to fight back against their government just yet. That's what it's going to come down to. The Democratic Party is completely hapless. The question becomes, is there a movement within MAGA that says we are not going to fight on Trump's behalf anymore if he's not pursuing the needs of working people? That may happen because Trump's got the lion's share of the working class now. Safe travels, Chip, and it's always great to see you. There's a lot of things we do with our food in this country that we shouldn't do. If you've ever been to a chicken farm and you get fresh eggs, you do not refrigerate them. There's a lot of things that we should not do, but we do it. I can only hope that we continue to grow in terms of our intellectual and emotional maturity as a nation, because we really need it. I see plenty of reason to be optimistic. I see plenty of reason to be pessimistic. But I know this. Our mission with our channel is to continue to try to transform politics into service. That's our goal. And these conversations that we have are very important. I was only going to come on here for a short while tonight to talk about the game. But of course, it always ends up being just a little bit longer. So make sure if you're here that you've hit that like button, that you are subscribed, that you click that bell, that you may just get over to Patreon and become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. Remember, tomorrow night, we will go live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Savvy Sabs will be our main guest. We will have plenty to talk about in lieu of everything that Trump has going on. And there's plenty to talk about. Yes, big dumb animal, but the Giants had the option to do basically a sign and trade, and their compensation was pennies on the dollar. They chose not to do that. They basically chose to let him walk, which was the worst decision that they could have done. And yet somehow the coach and the GM were rewarded for that level of stupidity. How unfortunate. For the final time, congrats to the Eagles. They did a great job. Perhaps now Taylor Swift will go away from football anyway. So will Travis Kelce. And there will be an even more wide open league next year. So may it be so. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Thank you for checking in with me this evening. Hope you enjoyed my little rant and explanation about the Super Bowl, as well as the worst Super Bowl commercial ever, because it could have been one of the best, if not the best. Shame on him and hers. Single payer healthcare, that's our future. See you tomorrow night.